All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Homeschooling Life Balance Table Talk. Thank you for being here. We have Angela and Heidi today as our panelists. So as usual, I'm going to get started with having them talk about why they got started homeschooling to begin with. So Angela, we'll start with you for that.
Hi, my name is Angela, and we've been homeschooling since the beginning, I like to say. And we started homeschooling because we just wanted that family time to instill our values into our children and to give our children the gift of time so they can learn at their own pace.
Heidi?
Okay. We started homeschooling. I'm Heidi. I have two daughters who are both graduated and college graduates. And I have three grandsons, and the first of whom will be starting kindergarten this fall, homeschooling. Cool. And we started homeschooling primarily because I was working full time, and I knew that I couldn't be as involved in the girls. If they had gone to a public school, I wouldn't be able to be as involved in the school as I would have liked to have been. And then, like Angela, we felt it was really important to be in a situation where we could instill our values to our girls as opposed to letting someone else do it.
Great. All right, so we'll jump into questions. If anyone has any questions as we go forward, just put it in the chat. And then at the end of the program, we'll open it up to a general Q&A for any last minute thoughts, and you're welcome to put them in the chat at that point or jump on to your mic and speak up then. All right, so to start, what do you guys prioritize and when?
As far as school subjects, English and math were the things that I prioritized. Even I taught 8 years at a private school for a while for first graders, and that was even still the same thing that in terms of school subjects we prioritized. Really, even above school, I would say we prioritized family commitments. Sometimes there would be things that came up with grandparents that needed to be taken care of, and that took priority. And so we kind of made our school schedule flexible around that. And sometimes if we had to go over what a time where others were having a break, we would do that. And so we finished everything, but it might have just not been on the same schedule.
For subjects, math and language arts, I think that's what we have to test for at the end of the year if you do testing, but we won't get into that today. So I would say that my girls love science and they love art. And so we do a lot of that as well because that's something that they enjoy. And we follow more of a less structured kind of setup. So kind of more following where their interests lie. Like Heidi said, family, we had a family member, I guess it's going on 3 years now, who was in ICU for several months. And I tried to, in DC, so we went practically every day to visit them. But I tried to keep with our classes that we were doing with our co-op. So the girls had some normalcy. But then we would go, like I said, to the hospital every day and we would pack our lunch. And it was such a blessing to be able to be there for our family. The family member is doing well now, so thank God. But that was really nice to just be able to, and sometimes we had to miss class too. It just depends what was going on. But family definitely comes first. And then also for us, church is important to our family, and our children do Awana through our church. And so they have a book and they're memorizing verses and things like that. So that would be one of the first things that we do after our breakfast and our Bible reading is that they work on their Awana before we kind of get into other things.
Great. What type of routine do you have? Angela, you spoke a little bit about it, but if you guys could expand just kind of what the routine is to kind of work homeschooling into your everyday life.
Okay. So for us, I just believe that we're learning all the time. So we don't have, I like the word routine that you used. We don't have a schedule. Like, I mean, class happens at a certain time because we're getting together with other people, but I'm not like, 11 o'clock, we have to do math sort of thing. I know you had a chores question. I don't know if you want me to that kind of goes into part of our routine.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I actually have it written down. I almost brought my whiteboard to the meeting. But we wake up in the morning, we do morning chores, which would be, making your bed, and we have a fish and a mouse, and, taking care of our animals and things like that. First thing in the morning, I mean, we don't have to feed the mouse every day, but, seeing what those needs are, making the beds, making sure our things are ready for whatever we're going to do for that day. Breakfast and Bible. We're just reading through the Bible. We've done different things over the years, but right now we just started in Genesis and we're just reading our way through, and that can turn into all kinds of rabbit trails, history and music, and and before I know it, I'm like, we just talked a half hour about what we read, in the Bible. Typically I like to do some sort of like call it learning activity. I don't like to put a big label on it, of something maybe a little bit more structured during that time, particularly on the day, that we have class where we go and meet with a bunch of other kids and learn. And then, you have your lunch, we got to get outside at some point. It's good just to get outside. And then in the afternoon, do some kind of other maybe a more structured kind of thing, or something that they're interested in as far as learning or schooling goes. We have afternoon chores that we do to kind of, I say, shut down our day. I feel like we're kind of done with all of our outings and things that we're going to do by 3 o'clock. And so we kind of start transitioning into our evening time stuff. And I always like to be prepared for the next day, the night before. I think that's good plan, because you never know what's going to happen the next day. So say, tomorrow, if we had class, they would have to get their nature journals and their backpacks and their pencil and get all of those things ready the night before. And they're old enough now that that's their responsibility. I'll remind them, but they can't find a pencil, go find a pencil. It's, not my responsibility. And then, we have time where, there's a downtime where you read a book, or we've got like the launch pads from the library. I'm very intentional with like the electronic time with my kids. I mean, every family is different, but that works for us. And we don't have TV, but we check out DVDs from the library. And so that's kind of how we work our electronics time in there. And then I love to read together, no matter how old your child is. You can read aloud to them, or they can read to you. You can take turns. So that would just be like a typical day. We do have our co-op day. We have field trips and outings and things like that, which would require more prep, like packing lunch the night before, which, usually homeschoolers don't have to deal with. I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do this every single day. What am I going to pack them? But so that I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, great.
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, my husband and I were both working full time when our girls were younger. And so we would get up in the morning and they would go to daycare, which we were very blessed to have daycare the whole time with other families that were homeschooling. So the daycare provider kind of knew what the routine was. So they did their homework during the day, and then when I got home from work around 6, we'd have dinner, and then we'd jump into actual doing math, doing reading, doing language arts, and I'd check their work and teach them the new concepts, and then bedtime. And I mean, in addition, we didn't go right from school to bed, but, but we would, maybe read together or play a game or something like that, just have some family time too. And, it worked. It worked for us. It's what we needed to do. When we moved to Virginia, I wasn't working full time, and we had a schedule similar to Angela's. There were days when we had the girls were very involved in 4-H, and it met during the day on a Monday. And so it varied based on what outings we had. If we had something in the morning, we might do our classes in the afternoon. If we had something in the afternoon, we'd get all of our classes in the morning. When the girls were in high school, they started taking Spanish at a co-op, and Angela's daughters are into art and science, mine are into music. And so they each took private lessons, both piano and then a string instrument, and then they were involved in orchestra. So that took up a lot of time, usually in the afternoons. So we would try and get a lot of the science, math, English done in the mornings. History was a big thing for our family. Both my husband and I really loved teaching history and loved learning history. So we did a lot of field trips and a lot of reading on that. And then by the time they got into high school too, they were fairly independent they knew what they needed to get done. And I just kind of provided reminders and obviously taught new concepts, checked their work, things like that. But they were a little more independent in when they did their homework.
Yeah. Heidi, can you go into a little bit more detail on kind of maybe some of the challenges that you ran into as working full time while also homeschooling?
Well, it was in some ways, because it was mostly when they were in elementary school, it was a bit easier. My job was fairly flexible in terms of I had I'd been at this agency long enough time that I had a fair amount of vacation time, so that if I wanted to take a day off because they were doing something or there was a really cool activity, we could do that. I think the hardest thing was more for me, like the priority on the family time. Just like I would have loved to have been home with them all day, but for us, it was still the right decision to homeschool. And it was great. It did allow us, as a mom, I loved seeing the light bulbs go off when they were getting a new concept, and helping them work through the math problems, which was not their favorite subject. It was just a fun family interaction time for both my husband and I, to just have that time and to be the ones to see the light bulbs go off and see, see their interests develop and their passions develop, which if we hadn't homeschooled, not that we wouldn't have seen any of that at all, but it was a definite more hands-on for us to be able to do that.
Makes sense. So you guys have talked about kind of working in the household chores with, your kids getting those responsibilities. But what about the things that the kids can't complete? When would you make time for the things that you have to do?
That's a great question. So for me, I decided that I needed to have a work day. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I needed to have a time where I sat down and I paid the bills and I went through the stack of mail that collected on the table, through the week. We used to do classes on Monday, but because our Sunday was pretty full with church activities, I said, there's no reason for me to stress myself out, and then, you come home late Sunday night and trying to get everything ready for Monday. So I finished that school year because I was like, I already got myself into this, So I finished that out, and then I changed classes to Tuesdays. And so Monday is typically, I use the term home day a lot. So Monday is a home day, and that's my work day. That's kind of our down day. Because we are busy on Sunday. My husband works 6 days a week. So Saturday is really like our only family day. So our weekend is kind of like Saturday, Monday for us, not for my husband because he's working, but for the girls and myself. So when I don't stick to that, I go, oh shoot, this bill is due, and Thursday I'm trying to fill it out and stuff. So I really try to set that time aside for myself and first thing in the morning, kind of, after the breakfast and Bible time and stuff, Right now, Awana takes a break. It kind of runs the school year. So we're not doing, I would even give them a break from that on Monday. Like Monday's just kind of like a weekend for us. And so, but there are times where I go, that thing is really cool. That's happening. Let's go do it. And it's on a Monday and it's like, should I do it? So maybe if it's in the afternoon, but or something super amazing that, it's going to happen once in a lifetime, but to really stick to it, because otherwise I'm just going to stress myself out if I have a late bill, or I want to write grandma, or whatever, whatever it is. That's probably the only thing that my children don't help with, would be the business kind of stuff. They even love helping me prep for class, for our co-op class. And so, can I make copies for you? Can I do this? Can I do that? So now that they're older now, they like to be involved with that kind of stuff, which is nice. I'm like, man, why didn't I think about this a couple months ago? But, and then, another thing is grocery shopping. It's like, you don't think about all of these things. And, so with COVID and stuff, we've been doing a lot of the grocery pickup, and which has just been amazing because it saves so much time. My girls are great at the store. They're big helpers. There's a lot of learning that can go, into that. But I'm like, when did I used to go grocery shopping? Like, I don't even feel like I have that time anymore, because we've filled it with other things. We just run up and, we're home in 10 minutes, and, but now I'm trying to think about how I can get that back into a routine, because they actually miss going to the grocery store. And I have little chefs, so they like to see what the different ingredients are and things like that. So I think I've saved money by shopping online, because you don't pick up all those extra things. But so I'm looking to see when we can go to the grocery store again, and then going to the library. This whole year has been crazy, but we would go to the library 2 to 3 times a week. And so all of that stopped. And so now, we want to go in and touch the books and see what we're checking out. We've been doing curbside, which is great that option was there before. But just kind of getting back into the swing of things and finding our day where we're going to go. And I love that we have flexibility in homeschool, but at the same time for us, like if we know Wednesday is library day, it's something to look forward to. The night before, we're getting our books together, so we're ready for, Wednesday. And I think getting the things done that are a priority to you, getting them done earlier in the day, if possible, because it's so easy for, whether you're homeschooling or not, but just for the day to get away from you and you go, oh, darn, I really wanted to do that one thing today and it's 4:30, in the afternoon. So that's one way of, prioritizing, is getting those things done earlier in the day. And then you can just kind of, do whatever, I guess, for the rest of the day.
I think for me, my husband was a tremendous help. A lot of times he would be the one to go do the grocery shopping. He might even help some nights with cooking or something like that. I would say probably the one thing that suffered the most was maybe some of the housework. Didn't get done, but that just wasn't my priority. If something's going to give, it's going to be, oh, rats, I didn't dust today.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times I would just do it either if the girls were doing something independently, then I would be working alongside them. So I was there if they had questions, but I could be doing something else, or I'd do it after they went to bed. So.
Did you guys try to make a list of what you need to get done quickly? Like Angela, you said you try to get those priorities done in the morning. Did you guys utilize lists or just kind of play it by ear, or both?
I'm a list.
I'm a list person too. And so I had like my lesson plans for the girls in terms of their lists of things that, okay, this is what you need to be doing. And then I knew what I needed to do when we got home from work. And, but there were days when it's like, okay, carry over yesterday's list to today, because we didn't quite finish everything.
Yeah, I tried to keep a lot of it in my head at first. You know, I'm like, okay, well, I know I have to pay that bill tomorrow and we've got to do this for class and I got to pick the cake up, you know, or whatever. And it was just overwhelming. You know, I'm like, I need to, you know, I'm a paper and pen kind of girl. My husband tries to get me a, you know, you can make lists on, I'm like, no, I can't be on my phone. It needs to be on a paper. So I got a planner that works for me, and it's the one that I use. It doesn't have like lesson plans and stuff in it. It's just for our activities. And then for the monthly calendar, and then on the daily part, I can go ahead and write, I'm going to need to pack lunch, you know, on the 12th or whatever, and things as they're in my head. And then, so I go through phases. I'm like, I don't need that, you know, and then I'm like, I need to jump back, you know, into doing that. And it just helps just get that clutter out of my mind. So I don't have to go, am I forgetting something? And I try to sit there and think about all the things that I'm going to need to remember. Because when you're, you know, trying to run out the door, you're not going to be thinking about the 5 things that you were supposed to grab on the way, you know, to the field trip. So that's been really helpful for me. I also do sit down kind of like where the kids are kind of having more of like a quiet time at nighttime, you know, like right before bed is usually what works for me. And I do my meal planning. That's also helpful. I don't, for me, like decision fatigue is real. And so, you know, especially, you know, when you're home all day with the kids and you're just, you know, questions and choices all day. And if I have that meal plan, you know, I like to plan 2 weeks out and I do my grocery list accordingly. You know, we could have had a crazy day and I look and I go, we're having frozen lasagna. I don't have to think about it. I just get it out. Or I think I would run into, we would have a lot of stuff, but nothing was defrosted because I didn't plan. You know, it's like, let's order pizza, you know, but it's like, I have all this food. So if I plan ahead of time and I can look in the morning, oh, you know, the night before we're having chicken tomorrow, let me put that in the fridge, you know, so it can be defrosting. And it just helps things run more, you know, more smoothly. And the kids are, I'm hungry. Can I have a snack? No, it's 5:30. I am fixing dinner. Like, I'll figure it out. But just, again, it's another form of a list, you know, just having those lists together help me stay organized and focused, hopefully not forget anything. And then definitely with the decision fatigue, my husband will say, well, what do you want? You know, I'll get something out for dinner. I'm like, just pick something. Like, I don't even care at this point. Like, it's just, I've made enough decisions today. But things like that really help when you're just done by dinner time. Not because it's been a bad day. You're just tired, you know, and then you go, oh, that's right. We're having this tonight. Yay. And the kids also get excited and kind of hold me accountable. Oh, it says we're having this tonight. Yeah, that's not going to work, you know, but get everyone involved.
And I will say that's a reality even after the kids are gone.
Right.
That, I think that's across the board, whether, you know, you homeschool or not.
Definitely. Do you guys ever meal prep ahead of time, or just do the planning, kind of figure it out?
Sometimes I would make enough that we could have leftovers.
Yeah, I've done it both ways. It depends on the season of life, you know, what's going on. I'll make like a double batch of something. Like I made a homemade lasagna, which feels very fancy. They're not that hard. I don't know why I don't do it, but you know, everyone's like, ooh, and I'm like, it's not that big of a deal, but I made a huge one. So we ate like half of it and I froze the other half of it because, you know, I can't give them lasagna for days and days. So, even if it's good. So I would freeze it, and then that's an easy dinner for, you know, another night to pull out. Some things I might prep as far as if I buy, like, say, chicken breasts, you know, and I want to cut them into strips or something like that, I'll do that before I freeze it. So it's such a nice surprise when I pull out the bag. I'm like, oh, it's already cut. This is awesome. It's the little things that make me happy. So, you know, cutting vegetables, prepping things. I mean, even for the kids for snacks, like we buy carrots, you know, peel them, cut them up, put them in a, you know, a dish with like a damp cloth or whatever to keep them fresh. And then it's so easy to say, just go grab some carrots, you know, because the stuff is already ready. And I've done where you do the things where you prep them in a bag, you know, and you freeze them and you throw them in the crock pot. I love the crock pot. But again, I need to remember to put it in by a certain time, so it will be done by a certain time. And so that's where my meal plan, when I say crock pot or freezer, I'll write things if they're in the freezer to help me plan with that.
You guys have mentioned, Angela, you specifically with the schedule, and you mentioned that your kids will hold you accountable by looking at what the schedule is. So do you have just that planner? Have you guys utilized like a wall calendar master list for your kids to know what the plan is each day? Or is it just kind of like in the morning, you go over what's happening in the morning?
Good question. So specifically, I was talking about the meal plan of them holding me accountable, because I'm like, we're supposed to have macaroni and cheese tonight. Like, what are you getting tuna out for? I'm like, it's too late. We can't cook the macaroni and cheese. But we have a whiteboard that kind of has our routine on it. So it won't say like we're talking about bees, but you know, it just kind of has like what's like I said about the Bible and chores and things like that. We have one of those big calendars where you put the little numbers in, and we've had since like the beginning of time. But I will put on there, like if there's a field trip, we've got like a little field trip card, so they know like, oh, at the end of this week, we're going on a field trip. Typically we'll sit down now that they're older, like at the beginning of the week, I'm like, this is what we have going on, you know, for the week. Monday, we're staying home. Tuesday's this, and we'll kind of talk about it. Or they might say, we're not going to the library this week. And, you know, we'll talk and see what we can fit in, what they might want to do. When we go to the library, it's just, we're there for so long, which is awesome. But I'm like, do I have like 2.5 hours in this day to go? But, so as far, the big thing, like they're already planned, so like they can't change like a field trip or something, but they'll get excited, and so we did dragons in the park. It's Fairfax County Parks. It's called I forget, Adventures in the Parks or something like that. And there's this company, and they set up these different like scavenger hunts in the parks, and you scan it with your phone, and it will lead you to a clue to go, and you go to the next one. So they've been doing it, I think, since Christmas as a way to get people outside during these social distancing times. And so they knew that's what we were doing, and it was on Friday. This was last Friday. And so in our family on Friday, we do movie night and pizza, something to look forward to at the end of the week. And sometimes I cook it, sometimes we get it out. So, but they wanted to have a dragon movie that night. One of my daughters, she put on her dragon shirt, so they just on their own were like creating this whole like thematic thing going on. And we went to the Manassas Train Festival, and then they got to watch a special movie that day, and we watched Thomas. And so they just kind of start creating our own themes for the day and getting excited. And I question telling them some things ahead of time when they were younger, because I'm like, what if it doesn't work out? Like, we can't go to this, or the weather's bad, or whatever. But then I was like, life doesn't always turn out the way that you think it's going to turn out. We can say, this is our plan for tomorrow. And if it pours, we're not going on the scavenger hunt in the park. But if it was something really big, I try to keep it a surprise sometimes. And also they see me doing a lot of the planning for the group that I run, and I have to hide things from them sometimes because I want them to have some little element of surprise like the other kids are getting. But like I said, they like to help plan too. So I have to find balance there too.
Right.
When the girls were young, well, all through school actually, they got excited each summer because I let them pick out their own planner, so that they could write down what their homework was in their planner, and then they could take it in their backpacks to daycare. So the daycare person knew what they were supposed to be doing too, and could hold them accountable. So they started using planners pretty early.
That's great.
And keeping lists.
Yeah, that is great. All right. So what types of tips do you have for parents for maintaining that homeschool and life balance, both for yourself, but also for your kids? Something we haven't fully talked about, but as well for your kids.
I think for me, it was a good lesson for the girls to learn that sometimes life happens, that we can make our grand plans, and then something's going to come up and interfere with those plans, and to be flexible with that. I'm not saying that it gets you out of doing a responsibility. Like, you can't just stop, say, okay, well, I'm just not going to finish this math book because I've got this going on. But I think I think being flexible with their schedule taught the girls that it's not so much like when you get it done, is that you get it done. And if you have deadlines, obviously, you know, like especially when they were in high school and going to classes with the co-op, they had deadlines that they had to meet. When they were doing music lessons, they had to practice. They couldn't skip practice because then they wouldn't be ready for next week's lesson. But, you know, if they decided, you know, I'd rather do English in the morning and math at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, as long as you get it done, I'm not real concerned about what time of day you get it done. And then, like Angela, there were certain times where we would go on a field trip or we'd do something, and then I would give them leeway. You know, it's like, okay, we're doing this today, but that means you might have to work on Saturday or do some schoolwork on Saturday because we really need to finish something up. So I think a lot of it's giving yourself grace to be flexible. I think that was a real benefit to the girls when they went to college too. It helped them kind of figure out what their priorities were, how to meet a deadline, and then sometimes you have to stay up late to get a project done so that you can, you know, if your choir is going to be having a concert on the weekend, you know you're going to have an all-day practice on Saturday, or and so you're not going to have Saturday to write your paper. So, okay, I need to start writing my paper earlier. So I think those were kind of life lessons that they learned by us having to be flexible.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I was gonna a lot of this, you know, the same things. You know, when we have a class and we need to be there at a certain time, like it is respectful to show up, you know, on time. I happen to be the teacher, but you know, it's important to show up on time. And then what does it look like when someone's late, you know, or if we're running late, you know, they're so cute when someone's late, you know, all the kids are like, hey, Johnny's here. I'm like, no, that's not, you know, it's not what we do. Like they can come in quietly and, you know, and it's hard because it's not, well, maybe it is. I was gonna say the children's fault that they're late because they can't drive themselves there. So, you know, but to just, you know, be respectful, like just come on in quietly. And this is, you know, what we do. Or if we're late going to someone's house or something, we need to apologize, you know, for being late or interrupting a class. You know, I'm a parent first. So if I'm teaching and my child misbehaves, I'll say, excuse me to the class. I'll go say something to my child, you know, and then I'm like, you know, I got to take care of my kids too, as well as, you know, the whole class. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's life skills, really, things that we're going to need growing up. Prepping the night before, you know, what am I going to need for this field trip? The morning of is not the day to try to find your hiking boots, you know, even if you have the time, it's still like, we don't need that stress, you know, the day of. You know, the girls help me, you know, packing their lunch. I'm like, okay, well, you know, do you want an orange or a banana in your lunchbox? And just kind of having where I'm not doing everything, you know. Some things they've been helping me with since they were little, you know, like folding the laundry. It's something we all do it together, but we all have our certain piles. You fold the socks and you fold the towels. And so we're still having family time and put some fun music on or something, but balancing that, you know, spending time with family, getting the chores done. Heidi mentioned staying up after the kids go to bed. Now, even though I was home all day, I felt like I didn't have time to do, you know, certain things with them. And so I would just stay up because the house was quiet, husband's asleep, you know, I can get stuff done. And it got to the point where I was not getting enough sleep. I was almost napping because then my husband would wake up early to go to work. And, you know, it was like I was sleeping in these like 2 to 3 hour increments. And it was not, I'm like, I can't do this long term. And so I try to go to bed shortly after my girls go to bed, just so I can, I mean, even if I'm still like awake in the bed, so I can just kind of start, you know, decompressing or whatever the word is, because I'll just keep going. I mean, that's my personality. I'll just keep working and working, you know, and working. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, you don't have to do all the things. That's one way to balance it, is to say, no, no is a complete sentence. Even, as homeschoolers, there's so much that we can do in this area now where, 10, 20 years ago, they didn't have all the options that we have. And so when I talk about these home days, I like to be home like 2 days a week where I say we don't leave the property, we go outside, we get, they get out of the house, but where we're taking care of ourselves, we're taking care of, like when do you change your sheets? When do you vacuum? Like all these things like you're not thinking about when you have your kids home with you all the time. They're not going off to school for a couple hours and you can get stuff done, at least, at the younger ages. So you really start going, wow, like, how am I going to fit all of this in? And, it's, for me, I can't leave dishes in the sink. That's just my pet peeve. I'm like, I can't go to bed if there's a dish in the sink. Like, that's my thing. But, there have been that times where I'm just like, you know what? I need to sleep. That's going to benefit me. It's going to benefit my family more tomorrow if I sleep and not worry about those dishes. So, even though that's a big priority for me, sometimes, I'll let it go. Like you really just have to see, what's going on. And then, I run this group when we do field trips and I hear mom saying, well, we got to go home and do math, or we got to go home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we were just on a day trip to a farm, I'm like, you guys, your kids have learned a lot today. It wasn't from a book, but your kids still learned a lot today. Like, I mean, if that works for them, that's fine. I'm not judging that, but to feel like you have to do it because you didn't open a book today, like we need to not put that stress on ourselves. You had fun today. Don't try to go home and prioritize doing math, just relax and enjoy a good dinner with your family and get back to it, tomorrow. No one is holding us to, this needs to be done typically, especially in lower elementary, like this doesn't have to be done by Friday kind of thing. But I mean, and then one more thing, like Heidi mentioned about deadlines, we've done a science fair through Hope. Heidi, Hope?
Yep.
Yeah. So we've done the science fair through them, I think since my oldest was 5. So we really missed it last year and this year. But especially if they're doing an experiment and stuff, you're growing a plant, you can't start the day before the science fair, so even at a young age, because my youngest did plants a couple of years ago, I'm like, okay, we need to figure out when we're going to plant it and when they're going to be ready and stuff like that. So I've mentioned the term life schooling before. And these are just things that naturally, come up and you just go with it. And if you really sat down and wrote everything down that your child learned that day, and you really look at how to load the dishwasher, these are important things, the list would be crazy, crazy long. It doesn't just have to be math, language arts, and science.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I saw that you had asked about how old my kids were when I started giving them. I think when they were like in first through like maybe 3rd or 4th grade, I wrote it down for them more so that the daycare provider knew what we had done the night before, knew what they had to do. So it's kind of her responsibility to say, okay, it's time to get your school books out now. Let's get your school done. But really, even upper elementary, middle school, I mean, they might need the reminders. And even, depending on the subject, even in high school, they might need the reminders to do it. But they still had it. And they knew that I was going to be checking when I got home from work. It wasn't like at the end of the week, I said, oh, did you do all your work this week? We were checking daily. And then I want to just reiterate what Angela said in terms of it's really okay to not do everything. There were, when my girls were younger and I was working full time, I was not willing to give up the family time for them to be involved in a team sport. Because it was just, I knew that meant them being out on Saturdays, a couple nights a week of practice. And I'm like, we can't do that. They did things like ballet for PE, or they did swim lessons. That was once a week. We could handle that. But I was like, no, we really do need you know, we needed that time for their main courses, and we needed that family time. Because I hadn't been with them all day, so I didn't want to just send them off to a coach to watch them, you know, play t-ball or soccer or whatever. And
yeah.
So,
Angela, have you started to give your kids assignments and then having them to complete them on their own, or are they still completing them with you?
Good question. So I think I have one who likes more of the lists and stuff than the other. I mean, you know, different personalities. So with my older, I'll go over like a new concept with her, and then I'll just send her off, you know, on her own, because we typically will do like math at the same time. So I'll get my older one started, and then she'll go off and work, and then I'll work with my younger one. They distract each other. I think like, well, what are you doing? That's cool. What are you doing over there? You know, kind of thing. So math and language arts for them is separate, but we do everything else together. So, you know, just on their level. So like if we have our co-op class, I have kids 6 to 12 in that class. So I'm not expecting the same from the 6-year-old, of course, as I am from the 12-year-old. We just drew the parts of a plant and like the reproductive parts and all this stuff in science class. And I said, now for my older guys, I said, I want you guys to go ahead and put those labels on there. And you hear, oh, you know, from everybody. I said, okay, you know which ones you are that should be, you know, labeling. I'm not expecting the 6-year-old to label, you know, the parts. But for me, I really love the group family learning. And so, I mean, obviously that doesn't work for all subjects because they're, you know, they're on different levels, but I kind of like to, you know, we're all doing math, you know, right now. My oldest knows to give us some time before she comes back, you know, with questions, because if I have to stop every, you know, couple minutes or whatever, with the younger one, she's not going to get the most out of it. So I make sure the older one is good to go and send her off. But I mean, if it's something she already knows, you know, that would be different. I could say, you know, we're doing review, just go to the next page, you know, and do it. And then as far as their Awana stuff, they have dates on the back of their book and when sections are supposed to be done. So I'll just say, you know, go work on your next section. And the idea is to do a little bit each day, but my oldest will just like to sit down and just do all of it, you know, sometimes. And I'm like, well, the idea is that, you know, you get into the habit, which I think is also good in, you know, prioritizing things, or, you know, because then if you only did half of it on Monday and then you go, oh shoot, it's Saturday, I got to finish this, you know. So I think instilling positive habits with kids too. I mean, just like, you know, brushing our teeth or putting our shoes away so we know where they are for the next day. And, you know, for the grown-ups too, you know, Monday, that really needs to be my habit of having that for my work day. And my husband's been working from home since whenever. And so that's taken some adjustments for us, because it was always like, yeah, he's out, like we can do, you know, the things we need to do. He's like, I'm not even bothering you. And it's just like another person here, you know, and just kind of getting used to all of that. One thing to help with our balance, I want to say my husband's work schedule before used to be crazy. And so like if we didn't homeschool, like they would probably never had seen him for those few years that he was at that one job. And so that was a blessing, you know, where we could, if he might work for 2 weeks straight and then he's off for 4 days. So we could just take that time to spend time with him, where if they were in public school, of course, you can't just randomly pull them out 4 days, you know, every month or whatever to stay at home. So that's been a blessing in that way too.
Yeah. Angel, how old was your oldest when you started to have her go off and complete things on her own?
Oh goodness. I feel like we've been doing it for a couple years. So she's 12. So I mean, I used to do it like simultaneously, like she would be at the dining room table and then I would be in the living room with the youngest. And my youngest is very tactile. So she likes a lot of hands-on things. My oldest likes worksheets. I mean, she'll do hands-on things too, but it's like, how come she's over there counting with bears? You know, like when she was younger, I'm like, you can count with bears too if you want, but you know, and so I was like, okay, maybe it's not working to kind of be like right next to each other. So I wouldn't say 8 to 10, but probably closer to, the 9, 10 years old.
Okay. We had another question pop into chat kind of related. How do you handle the child who will randomly take forever to finish a simple assignment? In this case, for perspective, he's 6 and has a wonderful imagination.
Well, I'm going to not pull so much from my homeschooling as from when I taught first grade and in a private school. And you had the kids who were finished like that, and the kids who would literally take, forever. And so sometimes I would say, okay, we're finished this task for now, the time for this task for now, you can finish it later. And so I would break it up into, or maybe if they had downtime, they could do it then, or they could finish it at home. And so it's okay to break it up, that they don't have to sit and do it all in one stretch. Because sometimes, especially like, that age, they kind of like, the attention span isn't real long. And so sometimes for some kids, it's really helpful to just get up and do something different. Like, okay, now I'll come back and finish that. And going back to piggyback a little bit on what Angela said with the age in which she started giving her older daughter the math, I think even like the math program that we used, and even when I taught at the private school, there's the new concept that you teach, but then there's a lot of review daily. And so I might sit with them and watch them do the new concept to see that they're practicing it, getting that done, but then let them go off and do the review problems on their own. And that's what I did with both, the kids that I taught in the public or in the private school, and also with my girls when we were going through math, especially, and even grammar and vocabulary. Some of it they could just do on their own, and a lot of it depends on their reading ability too.
Yes.
Like are they able to read the directions and understand the directions? Then I could be like, okay, you're good. Show it to me when you're done.
Yeah. I have families in my group who I don't really have that issue of like them taking too long to do things because we're not like super structured. But I've had other families that are like, she would sit here for 8 hours, to do this one math sheet. And for me, I want learning to be fun. I want it to be something that they're going to look forward to the next day, even if it's in a book. It doesn't have to be out in nature, which of course is super fun, but sometimes we got to, do some things in a book. I want to keep it fun. I don't want it to feel like a chore. And so for me, a 6-year-old, I wouldn't expect them to sit there for a long time. So if, you could redirect, don't forget, you're working on that math page there because they might hear a bird outside, or they might be thinking about we're having movie night tonight. So try some redirecting. But like Heidi said, me personally, I personally wouldn't be like, you need to finish this before this thing happens at that age. If they're high school or whatever, and like, if you don't finish this today, it's going to throw off your whole timing for your big project or something. Or, hey buddy, it looks like you might need a break. Let's go run around the backyard, or let's get a lemonade in the kitchen or whatever, and, and come back to it. Of course, make sure they understand it. Sometimes kids might say they understand something, but then, they just sit there and stare at it. It's like, do you know what you're supposed to be doing? So there are, a lot of things that could go with that. Or, depending on your child, set a timer. We're hoping to be done in the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to go do this fun thing. Rewards don't work for all kids, so, big deal. We're going to get to go outside, like, woohoo, so it really depends on the kids. But, if your kid's competitive, yesterday you finished in 20 minutes. Can you finish in 20 minutes today? So there are different little things that you could just try and see what works best for your kid. But for me, the focus still on being fun, not, yesterday you did it in 20, can you do it in 10 today? Like, you don't want to go there with it. But, so, because I feel like if they start seeing it as a chore, you'll notice that it's going to just start taking them longer. I mean, I taught in the public schools and I've taught different homeschool kids, and it's just going to get to the point where they're going to dread doing their math or whatever subject is. And then it's not going to be fun for anybody. You're like, come on, man, please just do a math problem. And to me, that kind of loses, for me and my family, the focus of, while we're doing this, I want you to know that learning is fun and enjoyable.
But I think even maybe even switching up the mode by which they're learning the concept. I mean, worksheets aren't for everybody.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that they're not learning the concept. Can they show you that they've learned the concept in a different way?
Yeah, like Angela said, counting with bears.
Right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily just have to be, or even, when they get older, show me in the kitchen, you want to make this for dinner or this dessert? Okay, how am I going to measure that? Or how am I going to change that fraction? So there are different ways that you can teach a concept that isn't necessarily just on a worksheet. Not so much a 6-year-old, but there are different ways to, get the idea. I know when there were some kids that they could tell me verbally, it might have been like a motor skills thing, that they just weren't as fast with their motor skills. But if I asked them the question, they could tell me the answer. So some of it's kind of learning your kids' learning style too.
Right.
Great. Well, we have time for just one last question, and then any further questions, if they could just be put into the chat, and we'll try to get to them real quick as well. But one last question to kind of round it out. When do you guys take time for yourself?
Oh, no.
Or try to take time for yourself?
Yeah. For me, I don't feel like I need a lot of time like some of my friends do, or they want to go out driving by themselves or do things. I'm like, I'm happy if I can get like 5 to 10 minutes for myself. I have a friend who calls it cortisol resets, where you just kind of, step away from everything and, take some deep breaths, meditate, pray, listen to music, whatever you need to do. And when she first told me about it, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's not going to make a big difference in my life. And I'm like, I'll try anything, right? So I would just step out our back door. I would tell the girls, I'm just going to step outside for a few minutes. Sometimes I would listen to a song, or I would I'm not a big chocolate eater, but I might grab like a little piece of chocolate and go outside, or some treat that I like, and go outside and be out there for maybe, 5 to 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, I did it, and I went on with my day. And so I started doing that, like, try to do it every day, like before I call it the dinner rush, in my house, where you're fixing dinner and getting ready for bed and doing all the things. And like, I can't explain it, but like it made a difference, and I didn't really think it did until I stopped doing it. I'm like, it's 5-10 minutes. I don't need this break. Like, I'm good. I'm gonna push through, I'm gonna do it. And sure, there are times when we need to push through and get on to the next thing. But when I stopped doing it, I was like, what's different? Like, I'm not feeling as like full, because they say you got to fill your cup, to be able to help others. And I was like, the only thing that changed was I stopped these cortisol resets. And I'm like, I need to start doing that again, especially when the weather's cold and yucky or, whatever. Then I would go to my bedroom or whatever for a few minutes and just like, pick a song and put it on. So for me, like, that's enough for me. That's what I do. I'm talking to my mom is something that I enjoy doing, that I say is just for me. I'm like, I'm calling grandmommy, nobody bother me. This is my time to talk to my mama right now. So those would be things. And then also finding time to be with my husband with his work schedule and the kids being home all the time. Now that they're older, we can just go sit out back with some lemonade and just hubby and I can talk, for a half hour while the kids are, doing, whatever. That's been one blessing of him working from home, is that, when he does have a break, like, I can take a break too, and usually be flexible. I'm like, we need to match our breaks up here because I'm doing stuff with them, but, and just, just trying to balance, spending time with him and the kids and, and myself. And, so that's what, I did check out an I Love Lucy cookbook at the library because I love Lucy, and I saw this cookbook. I'm like, I can't remember the last time I checked out a book just for me. It was, for teaching or to go along with their theme or whatever. And the kids were like, you're checking out a book for yourself, and I think it's important for us to model to our children too. They're like, Mama, I've heard you're always working. I said, well, I don't feel it's working because I love taking care of, of my family. But it's important to model just that sitting down and taking a rest and sitting with them and, reading a book, your own book or, playing a game or whatever, just by yourself, but other people are still around for them to see, like, it's okay to just stop and breathe, for a minute, because I don't want them to feel like they just have to be go, 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 go all the time, because you're not successful based on your productivity. So.
Great.
I think for me, when I was working full time, I didn't need my me time was spending time with my girls in the evenings and on the weekends. Not that I never did anything by myself or anything, with my husband, but that's what filled my cup, was being with them. And then when they got older and I wasn't working full time, I started scrapbooking. And so we would have scrapbooking days or scrapbooking retreats. And my husband would have the girls on a Saturday, and I'd go. That would be like my big me time. And then I can't echo enough what Angela said about spending time with your husband or a significant other, because that's the primary, that's your primary relationship. And so for our anniversary every year, we would try and just do an overnight somewhere. Now we were fortunate and blessed to have both sets of grandparents relatively nearby. So we had built-in babysitters that the grandparents loved and looked forward to spending time with. Having the girls there, just the girls there, without mom and dad being around, so they could really spoil them. And, it gave us a break to kind of just be with each other too. So I think that's really important. And then I try and do the same thing for my daughter, who they live close enough that we can babysit. She has 3 little boys under the age 4 and under. So we try and give her and my son-in-law a bit of a break to go do things, just the 2 of them as well. So the me time's important to refuel.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you guys both so much. And thank you for watching this as a recording or being present for it today. If you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to email me or email the library directly, and we can see about getting them answered. So the next session is going to be next Thursday, June 17th, and that's on dealing with stress.